Instead of thinking of parenting from this on-high approach, what if we just treated children like full-fledged members of the team instead of just someone who needs to obey or else these things are going to happen? And so that's one of the shifts that we're really focused on as well. I feel like there's a really big problem with parenting, and that is just that no matter what you try, no matter what you do, if you've got a kid that doesn't fit a nice, pretty box, it feels like nothing works.
Yeah, I hear you.
I feel like that's something that we've seen time and time again, not just in our own family, but something that we've seen with all of the families that we've helped. And so for those of you that are listening, if that is something that you've ever dealt with, feeling like you try absolutely everything and nothing works for your kid, I want you to know that you are not alone and there is a path forward. And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. We're going to be talking about why the methods that you have tried might not be working. And here's a little hint. It's not because you're doing something wrong or because something's wrong with your kid. And we're also going to talk about some alternatives and a path forward that is going to give you more confidence and rebuild your relationship with your kids.
Yeah. So, you mentioned we've seen at this point, thousands of people come through our program, called the Chaos. And, we've seen a lot of their pain points. What are some of the common struggles that you see?
I think one of the things that we see first and foremost is I think we see a lot of parents who are the ones who are doing a lot of the research and doing a lot of the, going to the summits, reading the books and doing the online learning. And many of them even have gotten PhDs in child psychology and development. And yet they are still struggling with their child's behavior. They're dealing with their kids not being able to express their emotions. They're dealing with increased anxiety. They're dealing with sibling fighting. They're dealing with their not being able to get out of the house. They're dealing with, tantrums or meltdowns or outbursts. And it just, there's every time they come to us, they feel like my kid is different or something must be terribly wrong. This must be an anomaly. I must be the only one dealing with this.
Right.
But yet the things we're going to talk about on this podcast are happening so much more frequently than people believe they are when you're the one in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That constant state of overwhelm, that feeling like I have no time for myself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know that was my case when I was going through it with, our son, and I had lost who I was. I was going weeks without showers because I was going from meltdown to meltdown to meltdown. And I was trying to keep the other kids safe. And I was trying to keep you from being frustrated. And I just felt so alone. I constantly blamed myself. And I see that so often with the parents that we work with all around the world. And, it reminds me of when I first started Lemon Lime Adventures, and we talked about it in the first episode. Yeah. But when I first started, I really did it selfishly so that I would be able to find one other parent who was going through a lot of the same things that I was going through or we were going through. And it surprised me because I didn't find one other person.
Right.
Yeah, I found millions. And so, my hope with this podcast and with this episode specifically is that we can kind of debunk this myth that if your kid is struggling with behaviors, that somehow that means that you are a bad parent. And I would like to debunk this myth that, kids should behave well, that is just the norm. And anything that goes outside of that must mean that you need to be stricter or you need to be a stronger parent or you need to get your kid checked out because something must be wrong with them. That's what I really want to veer away from. And if you're here looking for how to be a stricter parent, let me just let you in on a little secret. You're in the wrong place. That's not what you're going to get here, right? So so is there anything else that you see a lot? You help coach in our Calm the Chaos program a lot. So what are some other common things that you see people coming in and struggling with right at the beginning?
one of the biggest pieces here, at least from me, right, is sort of this concept of like almost like authoritarian parenting, or like, sort of like old way,
Yeah.
almost, and what we see a lot is like this juxtaposition between like one parent and the other.
Oh, we see that.
Right? Where like one parent is on the parenting journey, right? And then like they're trying to get the partner on board.
Yeah, we call that old way a lot. And for those of you that aren't familiar, this is like, rules from on high, right? Like the way that a lot of us were raised. I was raised, I'm not going to say my age, but I'm over 40. And so, hey, and
It's Google. We could just Google it.
you could Google how old I am. That's right. I'm actually not ashamed of how old I am, but
That's why I'm confused.
yeah, I don't know why I said that. I think it's a thing people say. So I just thought I was supposed to say it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this is like parenting.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, well, this is what I thought was supposed to happen, so I just did it.
Yeah, you're right. It is. That is so true. So, but what I was thinking is this is how so many of us were raised is, when I talk back to my mom, I had to go outside and get a Switch. And, or if I got a bad grade, I had to get the paddle, and, I would, stuff my pants with books so that it wouldn't hurt. And, but that was how I was raised. It was kids were to be seen and not heard. We were supposed to have good manners, and, it was all about fitting in. And one of the things that we talk a lot about, because my mom for a long time thought, because I was going away from that style of parenting when I had my own kids, she thought I was somehow saying that she had done it wrong. And I think that we hold on to that ego part of, well, that's how I did it, or that's how I was raised, so that must be the right way. But if we can release that piece of it and we can say, okay, yeah, that might have been how I was raised, but it's clearly not working, or I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in. So maybe what if there's another way? And I also want to say that I also realized that that way of parenting was done for a very, very valid reason. So we talk about this a lot, about the, Industrial Revolution, and about needing factory workers and needing soldiers, and for literal survival is where a lot of those strategies and a lot of where those parenting methods came from.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is we are no longer looking to raise factory workers anymore. We're not looking for good soldiers. We're not looking for yes men. We're looking for kids to be, like, it's just, there's a shift.
There is a shift. And I just want to put a little point out there for anyone that's listening. I also don't want to ignore the fact that there are certain communities, there are certain populations that still do need to adhere to the authority because their lives are in danger. Sure. And so, but that does not mean that they need you to be tough at home for them to learn how to, listen to authority when they're out in public. And I think that we could probably, I actually plan on inviting experts from those populations into the podcast to talk about this. But that is one thing that I just want to make sure we kind of put out there, that there are some people that still need that kind of strict, or believe they need that strict, because in certain situations, they need their kids to be safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And in some ways, our son needed that as well, right? Like he had to be able to do what authority said, or he was put in really dangerous holds when he was a child. So, and so we had to kind of navigate that aspect. That's not what we're really going to talk about today, but I just thought I should say that little tidbit. So we see a lot of people who come into our world, and I did this, especially as a teacher, and, having people like Alfie Kohn and having people like Laura Markham be speakers that I had learned from in education field. It was, for me, it was not a doubt in my mind that I didn't want to do this older way of parenting, because in the classroom, I never would have been that way.
Sure.
Right. It was always, let's be, let's be empathetic, let's work together, let me validate your emotions, let's, have class meetings together. And so when I became a parent, I thought, okay, I'm going to go this positive parenting route. I'm going to do, conscious parenting and respectful parenting and gentle parenting and all these things. And we see this all the time. And please hear me out. There's nothing wrong with any of those. But what happens is there's so many different parenting methods out there now that parents just kind of feel like they're like, well, I've tried everything. And which pieces do I use and which pieces do I not use? And I think so many people get stuck on this idea of the name of the parenting, the style of parenting. And I think, I'm going to kind of make a bold claim. I don't think it's about the name of the parenting. I think it's about how we show up. And I think it's about our goal as parents. And it's shifting how we view the parent-child relationship and how we view the behaviors and how we approach behaviors that's so radically different than the way many of us were raised, even the way that your parents raised you. Because I think for your parents, yes, they were super, loving and nurturing, but were they really digging under the surface to find out why 3-year-old you was going mad, mad, mad?
No, not at all.
Right.
Like that wasn't on their radar.
Right.
They knew that I needed some extra love and support or whatever. And they had that patience to deal with me.
Right.
And I had anger control issues and stuff, So old way, new way, right? Like newer way, like there's a lot of different names we could call things, right? But what's where are we going?
So I think what is happening is I think that now is the best time in history to be raising kids that don't fit a mold, right? And up until this point, so many people have felt like there's not a parenting method that works for their unique kid. And that we talked about this a little bit in the last episode, is that there is no, it doesn't have to be cookie cutter. It doesn't have to be picture perfect, and that all children are unique and all families are unique. And so what we need, instead of focusing on the discipline and the boundaries and on
structure,
on all the structure, right? And I'm not saying that kids don't need structure, but instead of focusing on that being the prevailing wind, what we need to be focusing on instead is the relationship and the understanding. So our kids, the number one thing that they need, especially these kids who are really challenging, is they need one person who sees them, who hears them, who understands them for who they are, and who is willing to look beneath the surface and willing to help them understand themselves. And so the calm the chaos way, what we've discovered over, the last 10 years, over working with hundreds of thousands of families around the world, is that there are these best practices in how to be human. And there's a lot of amazing research on neurodiversity and the brain and child development that has come in just the last, 20 years. And there's new stuff coming out as we speak. And so we know so much more now that we can do so much better. And so again, I think instead of focusing on, do I do authoritarian parenting? Do I do this kind of parenting? Do I do that kind of parenting? Instead, it's, what kind of relationship do I want with my kids? And how do I create a child who is compassionate towards themselves and compassionate towards others? Because if we create children who are compassionate towards themselves and towards others, imagine the world that we're going to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite things. Like, people come into our world and then it's like, hey guys, what if you treated your kid as part of the team, right? What if you treated them like a human, right? Like, it was just radical advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'd love if we kind of just talked through a couple of some of the paradigm shifts that we kind of prescribe to, or what we believe. And
yeah, absolutely.
And but before we do that, can we talk just a little bit before we go into that about why some of these other methods aren't working? Because we kind of skipped over that. So I want to talk just a little bit about two different things. One, I want to talk about why some of these older strategies don't work anymore. And we're talking about strict rules. We're talking about parent-led everything. We're talking about timeouts. We're talking about actual physical punishment and some of those things as well. And so then some of the reasons why that doesn't work is one is that it's led by fear.
Yeah.
Right? Is that punishments just teach you to blindly comply and they teach you fear. And I don't know about you, but I want to parent with love. I don't want to parent with fear.
Yeah, fear's a great motivator, right? But it's not really like a great teacher.
No, yeah, it's not the thing that we want. We want our kids to grow up and know why they're doing what they're doing and how to take what they've learned and take that into the future. And if it's all based on fear, when that barrier is gone, right, then
yeah, and a lot of the times it ends up being like a quick fix, right, that never really addresses the core issue.
Yeah. And and when we talk about, it's not just these older ways, sometimes some of these newer strategies as well, we're talking about strategies that are, let's reward the kids, let's use sticker charts, let's use, behavior modification. Those are still kind of slightly newer. Let's tell our kids like these, let's be kind but firm. And I think sometimes when we lead with that, it really gets to, it's the parent is in charge and the kid is there to learn from the parent. And instead of it being collaborative and instead of, I've learned so much from our kids and I've learned a ton from you and I learn a ton from other people. And so to think that me as an adult, just because I have more years on our kids, that I somehow know more than them.
Right, like you've seen all the angles involved.
Yeah.
And that's difficult too. Now you mentioned sort of like the school piece of like, oh, maybe we're doing reward charts or sticker charts or all these sort of like, very positive.
I think a lot of people are using those at home too.
Yeah, at home too.
Yeah.
Right now, definitely better than like, hey, go get a Switch. Right.
Yeah,
so,
but it's still.
So we've got an upgrade. Right. But the problem here is like, it's not really like it's really one size fits all.
Well, and it's rewarding the children who naturally are people pleasers. It's rewarding children for masking their needs and wants.
Yep.
It's rewarding children for fitting a certain narrative or mold. And then it lacks any skill building or teaching. And then it really puts a big old shining highlight on the kids who are struggling to communicate their needs or who are struggling to get their needs met in the class. It really highlights, we always said, you can have any classroom management strategy you want, but our son's going to find the hole in it, right? And we have another child who's the complete opposite, and she will, to a T, try to fit any classroom reward strategy, but she will hide the fact that she's broken her arm, right? And how many of our kids are sitting with not an actual broken arm, but they're sitting with that pain, they're sitting with that discomfort and not saying anything just so that they can get the sticker or the point for the class.
Well, sure. And you're using this broken arm analogy, like our daughter really did break her arm and sat in school and just kind of...
And didn't tell anyone.
Grin and bared it, right?
Yep.
Because otherwise I'm going to get the yellow mark on the wall or whatever for standing out.
Well, she wasn't going to get... I just want to be clear. She was not. And I think we could do a whole nother episode just on the dangers of rewards and punishments. But the big thing here is, and I want to be clear, she didn't get in trouble. She perceived that she was going to get in trouble.
That's what I was going to say. It's like whether it's a headache or like an actual physical injury, right? I don't want to interrupt, right? Like I don't want to stand out.
And that's the thing here is that a lot of parenting strategies out there, they ignore the core needs that are under the surface. They are not customized to the unique child and to the unique family and their background and their needs. And there's a lot of blame on whether it's the kid's fault or whether it's the parent's fault. And I just think that we can do away with all of that without thinking about what style is right or wrong. And instead, and I'm not even saying calm the chaos style is right. What I'm saying is that what we have found is the best practices across different fields so that you're looking at it together. It's not one piece or this piece or that piece. It really is this very zoomed out, holistic look at raising human beings.
Yeah.
And so can we talk about some of the shifts, some of those paradigm shifts and what that really looks like so that people can kind of picture it and they're not just saying, okay, but what does that mean in real life?
Yeah. Now we talked a bit in that last little piece, which is like, what's kind of like the existing problems? We talked about like seeing the kids like as a problem or something to fix.
Yeah. I mean, we see that all the time. We see when we talk about, but why is a child doing what they're doing? There's this look for, is it, because there's a diagnosis? Is it because there is something wrong with the kid? Is it because there's something wrong with the parenting? Is it because we're always looking for the negative instead of saying, I'm just curious, why is this happening, right? Like, what makes them tick? What are their sensory preferences? What are their needs? What are their wants? What are their interests? Like really looking at, I wonder why they do that, right? And because when we look at it as a problem, as something to fix, then what then comes next is suspensions, expulsions, timeouts, isolations, all these things that do more to disconnect the child than actually help them figure out their own body.
And it's very like us versus them, right? And like competition, like us versus them is like the oldest way there is, right? And like, spoiler alert, like Darwin got it wrong, right? It is not survival of the fittest, right? When we can collaborate and work together, that is when we are at our strongest.
That kind of brings us to the second paradigm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Another thing that is very fascinating to me is all of the different sort of like systems that we've set up as a society that are top down are starting to crumble apart. They're starting to fail, right? These new generations are coming in and like these systems just aren't working anymore.
Can you give some examples for people about what you mean by that?
Well, like the most recent thing that is like top of mind right now is how like, going through COVID, moving work solutions from like very centric office-based to like spread out, right? We have this like virtual revolution, right? And what we're seeing is that the new workers, like the new workforce, right? They don't understand the top-down like approach. It's not working for them, right? When the manager walks in the room and says, this is what we're doing, and everyone else just has to eat their own opinions or feelings, right? Like they don't feel like they're part of the team. And then they go find somewhere where they do feel part of the team, right? So like, that's one example.
Yeah. And we see research has shown time and time again, and also real life examples like you're just saying, is that when we can be more collaborative, when people can when everyone's voices can be heard, then you're more successful, right? Some of the greatest teams in sports and on earth are where the coach is not just saying, this is what you do, but hey guys, like this is how we work together. And so this paradigm shift is, instead of thinking of parenting from this on high approach, what if we just treated children like full-fledged members of the team instead of just someone who needs to obey, or else these things are going to happen? And so that's one of the shifts that we're really focused on as well.
Yeah. To me, it's super fascinating, right? The how it's not just one avenue or arena. There are multiple shifts happening all around, like in society.
Yeah.
So not just parenting.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things that we see, with our students when they come into our world, right, is there's a big gap between where their children are and where they'd like them to be.
Yeah. We hear a lot, and we see it, and I see it in my professional, work as well, is just this need and desire. Parents want their kids to grow up and be happy and successful. But successful to them is in this, like, they have their own view of what successful is. And then why is my kid not able to do this? Why is my kid not able to keep up with the Joneses? Why is my kid not able to, just get with the picture? And so the next paradigm shift that we really focus on is, instead of focusing on getting children to fit into a mold, getting children to trying really hard to create little us's, right? What if we were able to look at kids and we were able to allow kids to fully be themselves, and we were able to accept them for who they are right now, not for who we want them to be, with their own opinions, with their own preferences. We allowed our kids to speak up, to express their opinion, and all while fully being themselves and not squashing who they were designed to be.
Yeah, what wouldn't that make possible?
Yeah, what does that make?
If we have a society who is accepting and inclusive of, hey, we're all different here, we're all unique, but that doesn't mean we can't work together. Like, how can we make this work as a team?
Yeah. And it really is about helping the kids be able to know that, hey, I can be fully myself, and I have this safe place to be seen, to be heard, to be accepted, to understand myself and to be able to express myself.
Sure. And then, that sort of like begs the question as we're coming, like, but like, how are we going to be safe? Isn't this just going to be anarchy? Like,
well, I think it takes us to that final paradigm shift, which is really about, what if we are able to, instead of it just being all about the kids leading the way or all about the parents leading the way, what if it was this, as children, we become their safe place as their parent, as their person that they can trust. We become that safe place so that they can express themselves, make mistakes, and they can take risk. And as they're doing that, we can help them understand why they do what they do. We can help them develop relationships. We can help them navigate the world around them and make sense of the world around them, so that, we talked about in the last episode that we didn't want our son to hate the world, so that they can navigate the world. They can understand the world as they're moving forward, because they have that compassion, not just for others, but also for themselves. And they're able to advocate for themselves. So we're teaching them those life skills by being that safe place as they move forward.
What I really love about the framework you've created and the roadmap you've created for, over the last couple of years and with a couple thousand parents, right, and families, is, right, it's this family team approach, right, where not just the kids, not just the parents, but everyone, right, even the dog, even the cat, right, like everyone's needs, everyone's preferences, everyone's, like sort of like safety is addressed and like weighed out. And, it's not just what dad wants. It's not just what kid wants. Yeah. Right. There's a balance.
Yeah. I like to call it kind of this ecosystem, is that you're creating this ecosystem in the home where kids are safe, where parents are safe, where siblings are safe to speak their mind, to be who they are, to say what frustrates them, what upsets them, what's wrong. And then together, you come together and you create out-of-the-box solutions that work for each family member, so that it's not just, oh, well, we have to tiptoe around the aggression, or we have to walk on eggshells so we don't set off dad, or we have to do these certain things so that, the little one doesn't just cry all day, right? We really do work together, and we don't just understand ourselves. We don't just understand the one kid, right? They don't feel like they're the one being fixed in the family, but it really is, how do we work together as a family and understand each family member's needs? And so, that is what we're really trying to do here with Calm the Chaos, is help families create a family team that works together, that understands each other, advocates for each other, and ultimately empowers each other to be themselves and to live a life that is out of the box, that is, just this exciting life where they're able to do things that right now, as you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, this sounds really great, Dayna, but how are we going to do that? And that's why you're going to want to listen to the next episode, because in the next episode, we are going to walk through the Calm the Chaos system and how this is possible, even if you're dealing with, what we call category 3 storms, even if you're dealing with a partner who is not on the same page as you, if you're dealing with your own trauma, if you're dealing with a background of, being raised in an older style and you're just trying to navigate this, we're going to walk through that system tomorrow. But I really wanted you today, I think my main focus is really to address this myth that if things aren't working for you, that somehow you're doing it wrong or that somehow your kid is broken. And I just want to dispel that myth. If that's the only thing you get from today, that's what I want. Don't worry so much about figuring out like what to do instead. Just think through like, how do I want to show up and how can I create a family that works together, that empowers each other? And if you have that goal, then you're going to be headed in the right direction.
Yeah. And I think that comes back to something that like we teach almost everyone that we meet, probably even at the grocery store, right? Yeah. You just need to know like where you're going, right? And that tiny next step.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Now, if we're being selfish, I think your guys' tiny next step is just to like watch episode 3 or listen to episode 3.
I think so too. I think that, if you're looking for how do I create a family that works together, that empowers each other? How do I make these paradigm shifts? And what is my tiny next step on this journey? I would say that it's to go to calmthechaospodcast.com to find your next step and to like and follow this podcast and follow along for the next episode.
Maybe you guys have all the power, right?
Yeah.
To serve your unique family and your unique children.
I think, that's what it is. Like you are doing an amazing job. You are here, you are listening, you are showing up, and that is all that matters right now. And so just take that, give yourself a big old pat on the back and say, good job, human. Like, I think that's what I want to end with and just say, just like Jason said, you've got this. And we will see you or hear you or be with you on the next episode.